I'm Tracy Capelman. The year was 1916. A young German scientist had recently published a paper that would help push us into the atomic age. The Indianapolis 500 was just 5 years old. Closer to home, Knute Rockne popularized the forward pass as Notre Dame stunned Army 35-13. And a physician returned from Minnesota with an innovative idea on practicing medicine.
Good evening, everyone. I'm George Horvath. I've been a practicing pediatrician at the South Bend Clinic for over 48 years. This is Dr. Walter Baker, one of the founding fathers of what we now just call the clinic. I'm actually standing in a room in the major building that we named in his honor. Dr. Baker studied medicine in Europe as well as the United States. On a trip to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, he saw how physicians working together was extremely beneficial to patient care. He was so inspired that he gathered other physicians in the area to start the South Bend Clinic. They set standards for themselves, such as weekly meetings to discuss difficult cases, and can you believe it or not, the radical idea of mandatory showers for everyone before each workday. But the dream was in real danger of not ever happening.
In 1917, the United States joined the war in Europe, and 5 of the 7 original doctors volunteered. The clinic had to implement an emergency shutdown plan, just in case the unthinkable happened. After the war, Michiana experienced the Roaring 20s. Studebaker expanded. Ball Band, later to be known as Uniroyal, made boots and expanded. Bendix Corporation started. The Palace Theater, later known as the Morris Civic, was built. All 5 of the clinic physicians made it home. Michiana was thriving, and so was the clinic.
I'm now standing on the original site of the South Bend Clinic, where Elmer Crockett, founder of the South Bend Tribune, donated land. You may recognize Lafayette Boulevard here. By the mid-20s, the clinic had grown to include the first female physician, Martha Lyon, an ophthalmologist. The building had x-ray, laboratory, and an operating room. Good times were here for Michiana and seemed like they would never end.
The Great Depression started on Wall Street but ended on Main Street. In 1933, 1 in 4 were unemployed. In Michiana, Studebaker declared bankruptcy. There were labor disputes at Bendix and Ball Band. John Dillinger's gang robbed a bank and killed a police officer. It seemed like bad news was everywhere. By the late 30s, things were looking up. New leadership had Studebaker profitable again, and it seemed all of Hollywood was here for the premiere of Knute Rockne All-American.
I'm standing outside the LaSalle Hotel here in downtown South Bend. In 1941, this was the location of the clinic's 25th anniversary celebration. Dr. Baker and Dr. Fred Clapp, 2 of the original founders, as well as Mr. Tom Pope, the custodian since the beginning of the clinic, were in attendance here. It was a celebration of the past as well as looking forward to the future. But unfortunately, the celebration didn't last very long.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The United States entered the war, and thousands from Michiana answered the call. Studebaker made engines for the B-17, Bendix made avionics, Ball Band made fuel cells for B-25s, such as those used on the Doolittle raid over Tokyo. Captain George Gates was one of those volunteers, a physician on leave from the clinic. He participated in the D-Day invasion, receiving both a Silver and Bronze Star as the Allies fought across France. He also directed the liberation of one of the camps himself. In a letter he wrote to his wife, he stated,
"I've seen some things that I didn't think could happen. Concentration camps. All just skin and bones, left there to die. Worked until midnight getting most of them out where they could be fed and cared for."
When the troops came home, everyone wanted to get back to their lives. Studebaker produced the first post-war car. Jane and Martin Tarnow opened their first grocery store. Another clinic veteran, Dr. George Plain, whom served in New Guinea as chief of surgery and then CO of the 128th Station Hospital, co-founded the American Group Practice Association. Families were moving to subdivisions like Edison Park and Norman Heights, where they watched televisions bought at department stores like Robertson's. The 50s seemed like utopia, but not for everyone.
For parents of children with polio, the utopian dream was a real nightmare. The March of Dimes waged war on polio here in the States, similar to what the Allies did overseas in World War II. The Salk vaccine showed real promise, and locally, the clinic's own Dr. G.W. Erickson directed the field test. Incidentally, he was my partner for over 30 years. Cases of polio dropped dramatically. For his effort, the Polio Foundation paid Dr. Erickson tribute.
The next 50 years were a time of change and transition for the clinic and the community.
President John F. Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock. I have a dream today.
It's one small step for man.
Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait.
A lot's changed over 100 years. I'm Paul Meyer, Chief Executive Officer of the South Bend Clinic. I came to South Bend and the clinic in the late 90s. It was a time of enormous change commencing in the business of healthcare. Physicians across the country, and the clinic was no exception, responded by growing. We added the distinguished practices of Michiana Pediatrics, Family Care Associates, and South Bend Internal Medicine. We expanded our facilities with new campuses on the south side at Ironwood and on the northwest side at Portage. We doubled our campus size downtown and at Granger and added new presence in Mishawaka and New Carlisle. It's been an amazing time of growth. New physicians, new specialties, new technologies, new services. What started the 90s as a group of 35 physicians with 2 offices has grown to over 125 providers with 8 campuses. But just as amazing is how we've grown through the combined leadership of physicians, management, and staff working together as a team.
So even though I'm a relative newcomer to South Bend, it immediately became apparent to me what an important thread in the fabric of the community the South Bend Clinic is.
From what I recall, my first appointment at the South Bend Clinic was in the early 60s.
I believe my first appointment was in the early 80s.
My first appointment with the South Bend Clinic was probably the 1970s, early 1980s.
One of the things that struck me about South Bend Clinic was that they've always been very committed to the vitality of the downtown South Bend area. None of us who live in St. Joseph County believe that we can have a thriving county without a thriving urban center. South Bend Clinic decided to do a major investment in their facility over there on LaSalle and Eddy. That significant investment in that location really expanded the radius of the downtown area and was a really important symbol of optimism and leadership at a time that we needed it.
Well, we were trying to have another child. Our first one was pretty easy, but the second one we struggled a little bit, and we were referred to Dr. Meekoff. And within 3 months' time, we were pregnant.
South Bend Clinic has been an important player in the transition with the city of South Bend, moving from a manufacturing-based economy to a knowledge-based economy.
I go to the clinic, my husband goes to the clinic, we take our kids to the clinic.
So I think the South Bend Clinic's been an important ambassador for St. Joseph County, as we're looking to attract new jobs, new investment, new population here to our area. The clinic plays an important role there. Quality health care is an important deciding factor for folks. The doctors and staff over there have been strong advocates for our community, have participated and done a lot to really help sell and promote this area.
Everybody from the time you hit the door to the time you hit the doctor's office, people are pleasant, they direct you to wherever you need to be.
Yeah, when I was at downtown South Bend, the South Bend Clinic came on as a community funding partner. And that was important at that time because we had had some troubles at DTSB, and the clinic stepped up and let other community partners, community businesses know that it was important for them to show their support too.
My mother and my father go to the clinic.
I clearly feel treated as a person, not as just the next appointment.
After I got done seeing Dr. Gates, he retired. I'm now a patient with Dr. Gail English. One thing I like about her is when she comes into the room, I've known her for years, she still says her name and hi, how are you, and talks about your family and everything before she jumps right into why you're actually there to see her.
You know, for me, another great place to see the South Bend Clinic making a commitment is in the Northeast neighborhood with the NNRO, the Northeast Neighborhood Revitalization Organization. They're helping with housing revitalization, public safety, commercial, retail development, and really making a huge impact in the revitalization of that neighborhood.
Another important contribution from the South Bend Clinic has been the commitment to the educational programs. Since 2008, we've offered clinical education for 3rd and 4th year students, and physicians from the South Bend Clinic have served as preceptors for students in general surgery, ENT, pediatrics, dermatology, just to name a few.
My sister's family goes to the clinic.
In 2007, Doctors Jim and Holly Harris approached the Community Foundation. They wanted to form a scholarship fund, which is now called the South Bend Clinic Charitable Fund. So years later, that fund has grown to a significant size through hundreds of contributions from doctors at South Bend Clinic, nurses, staff, and even patients.
My sister's in-laws go to the clinic.
Community outreach is also an important function for the medical school, and the Navarre Student Outreach Clinic is our prime example of that. Joe Serban from the South Bend Clinic serves as the medical director for the Student Outreach Clinic and really has been critical to the success, both in terms of the students' educational experience, but also in providing care for some of the most vulnerable patients in the South Bend community.
It's the students' clinic. I've always liked teaching students. Well, we had a woman come in who had the worst case of hyperthyroidism that I've ever seen in my life. It probably would have killed her in the near future. And so we diagnosed her, and then we actually got one of the specialists here at the clinic to see her and do the definitive procedure to save her life in the long term. That was very rewarding for the students.
One experience I had with Dr. English in particular, I had some concerns that could be remedied through just checking with a blood test. This was a Friday afternoon, and I think it was probably a little after 6 I received a phone call from doctor's nurse giving me the results, which thankfully were positive. I didn't have to wait the weekend to find out what the results were. And that's kind of kindness that I run into often, most of the time at the clinic.
My husband's grandmother goes to the clinic. I think that's it.
I like people. I like the fact that they depend on me and they trust me, and when they're at their darkest hour, I'm the person that they've chosen to help them. That's an awesome feeling.
I became a physician because I love people. It's something I always wanted to do. I enjoy taking care of people for the long term.
I started out in college thinking I was going to be an engineer. And then I realized there's a way I can do that in a way that is very thrilling and rewarding. I decided to be a surgeon.
I went into ophthalmology because I had intermittent loss of vision in high school due to migraine, and made my decision to become an ophthalmologist based on the exam and the people that I dealt with. The reason I came to the clinic, and it turned out to be the perfect reason, was I did not have to be a businessman. All I had to do was take care of patients.
I was a second-year resident at St. Joe Med Center. I had to do an ENT rotation, which fell through, and I had to find another doctor. Dr. Sabato took me right away, and on the second day, he asked what I was going to do with my career, and I didn't know. And he used a speed dial and called Joe Serban and Granger, and before I knew it, the next day I had an interview. And I thought, who are these guys? It's like a syndicate. And I became the first locally trained doctor to join the South Bend Clinic.
After going on interviews to several areas locally in the market, I enjoyed being here at the South Bend Clinic because of the camaraderie I noticed between the physicians. It seemed much more like a family as opposed to being a cog in the wheel.
The clinic definitely allowed me to be a better physician, and it allowed me to practice medicine the way I was taught. People came first, and I think the clinic allowed us to do that.
The clinic has made me a better physician in that it has allowed me to focus on taking care of patients on a day-to-day basis.
I can make a quick phone call to a surgeon, an orthopedic doctor, ENT, OB with a question about something new that might have come out. And if I wasn't in the clinic, there's no way I would be able to contact a specialist that fast.
I feel that just being able to walk down the hall and talk to my partners and my other specialists, I think that allows me to do a better job for my patients.
We could just go around and discuss with the people next door what was going on, and then go back to the patient and solve their problem in 5 minutes versus 5 weeks.
I really love the fact that the clinic allows me to focus on patients because we have an excellent management team. All I have to do is patient care.
To begin with, it was really it was a great place to practice, and if I had to do it all over again, I would do it twice.
I love the clinic because I'm part of a team. I'm part of a team with great players, with a great vision and a great goal, and it's really a great place to practice medicine.
When I first got here, I had a gentleman patient who was, I would guess, late 50s, and he was blind. And when he came to see me, he still had some light in his other eye, but he couldn't do anything else. And he'd been told not to have anything done to it. And I came along, and with the new surgical techniques that were beginning to arrive, I told him that there's a possibility that you could see out of there if you would like me to take out your cataract, which seemed to be the only problem. And over a period of about 2 or 3 weeks, he made up his mind, and then we went and did it in the hospital. And when I went in to take off his bandage, he'd already taken it off. And he was sitting there crying. And I can remember watching him look out and see cars go by, because he hadn't seen them since the 40s, and they were so different, you know, and he's just sitting there. And his life changed. He got married. He'd never been married. And the last time I saw in the middle of this men's choir, singing his heart out with his big beam on his face. And I say I changed that guy's life as much as anybody's I've ever done.
As we have seen, the last 100 years have been an amazing ride. I think that Dr. Baker would be proud of the legacy they left behind. But as we all know, when you're on a ride, you look forward, not in the rearview mirror. There are trends and regulations that will continue to challenge the clinic in the future. So far, we've met those challenges. There are 2 things more we have yet to do. First is to thank our current and former staff. From the nurses, medical assistants, front office staff, maintenance, IT, lab and x-ray, to the business office and administration, just to name a few. Simply put, without you, the last 100 years is not possible. And lastly, our patients. Your healthcare is a choice. Your entrusting us is why we exist. Thank you, Michiana.
Thank you, Michiana.